Hello and welcome to this episode of For Your Consideration. Well, my name is Guy and today we're looking at fast travel. And by fast travel I mean any kind of device or method that your players' characters can use to get quickly from one side of the planet to the other, from one side of the galaxy to the other. Whether that's a stargate, a teleportation portal, a very fast flying kangaroo, because that's a thing, or any other device. We're not talking conventional things. We're not talking caravans, carts, cargo haulers. We're talking something that's extraordinary in terms of the speed at which one can move. Now, if you look at my game, The Adventures of the Windswift on Bacon RPG channel, which I'll put the link below, I've got the fast sailing ships, the airships that can move incredibly quickly around the planet. They're not the fastest ways of moving, however. There are other ways that are incorporated into my setting that allow for almost instantaneous travel that's very, very restricted. There are other types of fast travel which the characters could arguably get access to at higher levels, but those are restricted by some strange orders rules. So there's different ways of moving around, and we're going to look at some of those types at the very end of the video. But for now, we're going to look at why would you have it in your game in the first place. So when we're talking about why would we do that? Now, a lot of campaigns take place in a very small, isolated space. There's nothing wrong with that. A city-based campaign where the entire thing happens just within the confines of the city, there's nothing wrong with that. It's absolutely fine to do. But you might still want to get your characters from point A to point B in a fast way, and not just by doing a travel montage. Perhaps time is very, very important, and these portals can be used to get from point A to point B. So whether you're in a city or whether you're in a galaxy, these kinds of things allow for easy movement. They sometimes take the burden out of the game as well. The players go, oh, we needed to go to there, which is a week's travel normally, because we left the thing behind, or we forgot that, or we didn't do this, or we didn't do that. You then are faced with this horrid situation of having to go, well, all right, montage, you take 2 weeks to go there, and then you come back again. That's not really interesting, narratively speaking. You can do it once or twice, but after a while it just feels like you're watching The Hobbit, just lots and lots and lots of travelling and nothing much in between. So, by having fast travel options, you can now suddenly move around a lot quicker. What that also does is it brings in adventure options. There is no other way of fast transportation that has more stories, more adventures based upon it than the transporter effect from Star Trek. Now in Star Trek, that transporter, which is supposedly safe technology and has been in use in some of the shows for 200 years by the time we're actually in that show's time period, they are a remarkably unreliable form of travel. The amount of accidents where they split the characters and create a double of them, or they send them to a different universe, or a different time period, or a different dimension, or they convert them into different things, or they phase them out of one reality and into another, or they half phase between the two of them, or they bounce off of the atmosphere and get sent to the wrong planet. There is just a proliferation. Every single series of Star Trek has had a transporter accident, some kind of teleportation problem. Now, the reason why the shows originally had the transporters was because of budget reasons. They couldn't film a shuttle leaving the Enterprise and landing on a planet every single time. It was just too prohibitive. So they said, well, we'll just throw some glitter in the air and we'll make the characters move from point A to point B. However, it spawned so many adventure options, so many episodes are based on the transporter incident, that it became an institution, something that's now being explored in real life on Earth here, and it's a very interesting kind of science. But the idea was it was to create easy movement, so that not every single time we had to see a shuttle leaving the spaceship. So adventure options start to come out with your different types of fast movement. It becomes a resource sink. So if your players are very good at getting cash, at earning lots and lots and lots of money, it can become a very interesting resource sink. It's going to cost you to do this, but you can do it, so it's not going to get in your way. And oftentimes there's a bit of a balance. You need to find your market share as to what the cost should be, that the characters are going to use it when they can, or when they can afford to do it, or in a case of emergencies, and they won't use it under regular circumstances. That's your ideal balance, because then you don't lose control of how fast the characters can move around. But it does take away those valuable gold coins or credit chits or fuel for the ship or whatever it is that you whatever your setting might use. So it can become a nice resource sink. It can also make a difference in your setting. So in my world, I've already spoken about, we've got these flying airships, we've got the Drow Republic, which have got teleportation circles, which is more like your traditional Stargate type of thing. Excuse me. They've got these differences. They've got these gigantic elevators which link the Underdark to the surface. But the elevators take 6 hours, so it's not fast travel, it's different travel. And again, it's about building the setting. How do we make the setting that much more interesting by adding in these fast travel techniques? One of the things that blew me away when I was playing the Star Wars Online game, with Star Wars The Old Republic Online, was the amount of different ways that they used this fast travel idea. You had a mechanized travel where you were using a taxi on Coruscant, but when you were on Alderaan, you were on this giant flying manta ray. So there's some very, very interesting different settings that can come about by adding in fast travel into your game if you previously haven't had it, or if you think that it's something that's not for you. It can add an interesting element to your setting. Now, the consequences, obviously, is easy movement. Your players can move from point A to point B very, very quickly. Now, in a lot of fantasy settings, players at higher level have the capacity to create dimensional doors and teleportation circles and those kinds of things where they can get out of the situation quite quickly. On the other hand, if you're adding in an additional method for them to do that, additional way for them to do that, it might seem as if they're going to get to round too quickly. Again, it goes back to the idea of charging enough for them to do that, for adding in enough of those consequences for them to do that, but at the same time for restricting that movement. Another setting that I was running, there were mage towers that had been set up all over the world. All of the major cities had these mage towers, but in order to jump from one mage tower to the other, you either had to pay an exceptionally exorbitant cost, or you had to actually get the code, if you like, the Stargate code, quite literally, of that particular portal, or buy a portal scroll which happened to have that gate's address on it, but the scroll was consumed once you used it. So what had happened was my players' characters started to go, oh, well, we can just go here quickly. No, we can't. We don't have the portal address. Oh, how much is that going to cost? Oh, it's too much. Okay, we're going to have to go a traditional way. And then I can run a traditional travel adventure. Or, oh, well, we need that portal scroll. Right, well, there's a merchant who sells them because they know they are used. You've got to make sure that the rest of your population uses them as well. So it's easy movement for the players' characters, but it's also easy movement for your villains, for your hindrances, for your antagonistic forces that are going to try and stop those players' characters from doing whatever it is that they're going to be doing. That gives you control as well. It allows you to create potentially bigger spanning stories. So if you're struggling to create these geopolitical stories where the characters need to be in multiple places at once, and you really don't want to pull a Game of Thrones. The last season of Game of Thrones was so heavily criticized because characters would literally go and run and tell this person, and next scene the person had arrived. It's like, wait, you ran the entire length of that continent, told that person, and then came back with them in the space of a few hours? That doesn't make sense. The entire season 2 was devoted to getting from point A to point B. You've now done it in 3 seconds. So the idea is that you can control the movement. You can control how often those gates can work. So if you're worried they're going to get overused, oh, sorry, the portals take time to charge up, or the planar shifting cosmos causes it to be able to be done once a week. Star Trek tried to bring an interesting idea in where they were going to limit the warp speed that the ships could travel at, because they said that the warp speed was causing damage to the subspace environment that they were using. It didn't really have much of an impact on the narrative line, and I was never really sure why they brought it in. It just seemed to be an off-the-cuff kind of idea. So you need to control that. You need to make sure that you understand fully how they work and how they can be manipulated. But at the same time, be prepared for the player's characters to try and manipulate and control those as well. It's a fantastic adventure generator. And of course, timing now becomes a very powerful thing that you have control over. You can now say, right, well, it's going to take them normally 3 weeks, but they can use a portal. It's going to take them a day. Great. So we can now advance things along. I can put more pressure onto them. I can make the timings of my adventure seem tighter. I can give them, you have until tomorrow to deliver the princess to the other side of the planet. Oh, how are we going to do that? Oh, yes, we're going to have to get a portal scroll. Right, we've got to get a portal scroll so we can do the thing by the thing by the thing. So you have a lot more control over timing, as opposed to Well, yes, you've got to get her there in about a month because the ship takes about 3 weeks if it's got good weather to get there. So you see what sort of control and timing that you can then have once you've introduced these different transportations. So of course now here we've got all the different types. I have kind of mentioned a few of them. You've got your standard portals, you've got your Stargate portal where they've got to kind of move the rings to generate the right code to take them to wherever it is that they're going. You've got to have the portals intact. If they're broken, they won't work, or they'll send you to a different dimension, those kinds of things. So magic, of course, is another way. It's not just a portal, it's not a physical structure, it's just magic. You've got mechanical, which could be a slingshot, it could be a rocket-propelled chair. Going back in time, the gummy bears had their gummy tunnels, which was this eagle-like craft that would run on rails. It was almost like a roller coaster, if you like. You could go something along those lines. Certainly that would be quite entertaining to watch. Flying, of course, always does speed up things. It makes things seem to go a lot faster because you're covering more ground. There's less encounters up in the sky usually than down on the ground. Less opportunities for ambush and that sort of thing. So flying absolutely is an option. You've got ships, whether it's starships or special design ships in Braxia. The elves of the Sajet Empire, which is the biggest empire there is, literally crossing from one side, I'm looking at the map over there, literally crossing from one side to the other of that empire on foot is at least 3 to 4 weeks worth of travel time across very harsh desert. So they've got their sand ships, which are catamarans, which have hulls that glide through the sand of the desert rather than sort of grind through it. Those ships can travel that same distance in a week. So it's about working out what works for you. And of course, then you can have animals. Is it a blink dog that's been harnessed to a cage and you basically touch the cage, or you step inside the cage and the blink dog causes you to move from one point to another? Blink dogs coming from Dungeons and Dragons setting. So again, it's about looking at these options and possibly combining them together. That's what I've found works the best, is when you start to do this, when you start to bring in multiple ways and different races are using these different techniques, that starts to create a rich environment. That starts to create a really powerful environment that your players will respond to by saying, well, why? Wow, this is a fantastic space. It's well thought out. This race uses this kind of stuff, but this race uses that kind of stuff, because they're just so dynamic. They're so different. They're so almost real. I love this setting. I love this space. So fast travel is much more than just being able to move quickly from point A to point B. There's so much more to it that you can plumb to get your game up that next level. What kind of fast travel do you use in your game? List it below. Let us discuss and unpack and explore all of the different options that there are that we can really enhance and bring our games to life. Leave your comments below. Hit that like button, of course, if you like the video. Hit the subscribe button if you want to join our ranks as we grow and swell with people who are interested in creating fantastic, exciting, and dynamic worlds in which we can all play and experience our wonderful hobby. Now, if you are looking for players, head on over to www.rpgtablefinder.com. That's our own proprietary website developed by the Web Goblin, which has role-playing tables in there, and you can go and find people in your area, so you can have actual tabletop role-playing, or you can find people who are wanting to run games online. And we all think the same, so you can fairly much bet that you're going to get games that are run along the lines of this channel, and that creates quite a cool space because we all sort of think in the same way. And I think that's a fantastic space to be in, and to look for players or GMs that you might need. Anyway, until next time, I wish you and yours the most wonderful of weekends.